All right, let's go. Let's pick on up where we left off. All right. Okay, so one of the nice things about SQL is we can allow for what's called pattern matching. So basically, the idea is, what if we wanted rows where a certain cell has a string in it, but not necessarily that it is that string. So it's not like we're not checking equals. So for example, I guess in some ways it's kind of like in Java, but what's that?
Ben öncelikle bilgisi almak istiyorum. Bizim evde bir kablo vardı. Kablo ile internet için. Ama kablo çalışmıyor. Sizden hizmet almam durumunda kablo ne şekilde hallediliyor?
Ozan, mikrofonla
Hayır,
çık.
Süper Online'dan
Okay.
ekip geldi. Kabloyu test ettiler. Sinyal var aşağıda ama yukarıya gelmiyor.
Bir dakika. I think that helped. Okay, I think Ozan accidentally had his microphone on, maybe. Okay. So it'd be like in Java, where if we're, instead of saying equals, we're saying contains. Like, does it have this string inside of it? Right. Now, unlike Java, we're going to find this is actually much more powerful than in how we can do stuff like this. Okay, so for example, let's kind of see how this would work out. So it's going to give me, notice, any string that has Glasgow in it. Glasgow, can't remember how to pronounce this. Why'd they have to give us this difficult to pronounce city? I don't know. Okay, so now there's two types of wildcard characters for this type of SQL. I will point out that Microsoft Access uses different wildcard characters, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. Okay, so two special characters. % means a sequence of 0 or more characters. An underscore means any single character. Okay. So let's look at an example here. Let's just pull up a blank spreadsheet. Let's give some examples. Let's do Turkish cities, okay? Let's start off with cities that I've lived in. That's it. Cities that I have visited. More recently. It's another good city. It's another good city we should put in here. Ah, good. I have it on the English keyboard, so I'm not gonna be able to do the Yumashot gay. Let's see. Oh, Pure-Kosh. Borsa, yeah. Oh, so what about okay, yeah, one more. Let's see. Art will be a good place to end. Okay. All right. So here's our list of cities. Let's do this. Let's alphabetize this. Is there a way to do that easily? There we go. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've used Excel. Google Sheets is my friend. All right. So let's see. Let's say we were to say, give me all cities that start with A. So we could say, notice we use like. Okay, I want you to notice something here about this thing here. We use the keyword like. So the address is like this pattern. Okay, not equal. We don't use equal. Equal something different. Okay, so like. We want it to start with A. We would do something like this. Okay, so what that means is I want it to be like an A followed by 0 or more other characters. So the results, these three would show up, right? Because everything else doesn't have an A in the first position. Okay. What if I did this? What if I did like would Ankara show up? Yeah. Okay, so Ankara, Antakya. Yeah. Antalya. Yeah. Okay, so these three. Okay. What about this one? Corridor? No. Bursa would. Gorme, no. Isparta, yes. Istanbul, no. Izmir, no. Kaş, no. Mersin, no. Tekirdağ, no. Yep, all the cities that finish with A. Okay. So let's see. What about and A. Okay. Which cities would show up? Yeah, just Bursa though, right? Because even though Burdur starts with B, it doesn't finish with A. Even though Antalya finishes with A, it doesn't start with B. Okay. So what about the and trick you guys with one. This one, I%A%. Okay, Sparta. So we know it's going to start with I, so it's one of these three, right? Sparta, yep. Sparta, yep. Yeah. So you think Istanbul would, right? But it doesn't finish with A. Why would Istanbul show up? Yeah, there's a percent at the end. So what that means is it's saying, give me, starts with an I, then has some number of characters, then an A, then some number of characters. Okay. Let's do one more. Let's do. I'm trying to find. I'm going to find one that's. Percent S percent A percent. Oh, that one may be a tough one. Okay. So you're saying Istanbul, Bursa. No, this won't give us a syntax error actually. So got Isparta, Bursa, Isparta. Kaş is listed here. Okay, so most of you guys are saying Bursa and Isparta. All right. So we know it's going to give us all cities that have an S in it somewhere. So it's going to be, so that would rule these out, as well as this one, as well as this one, as well as this one. Sure. Okay. It's also going to give us any cities that have an A in it somewhere, which would rule out. So let's see. So not this one, not this one. That was already listed. Okay. But right, so those of you who said Bursa, I was trying to see if you guys were going to get tricked by this. Bursa does show up, and here's why. Because it's saying, give me any number of characters, 0 or more, before the S appears. So BUR shows up before the S appears. Okay. Then it says, give me any number of characters, 0 or more, after that S, but then an A appears. So even though the S and the A are right next to each other, yep, it still shows up. And then finally, any number of characters 0 or more after that last A. Okay, so yes, Bursa shows up, as well as those of you who said Isparta, yep. Those of you who said Istanbul, yep, STA, right? Now, one of you wrote Kosh, but actually Kosh would not, because it's the order is important, right? It's not just about an S or an A appearing. It's about that it needs to be some number of characters followed by an S, followed by some other characters, 0 or more, followed by an A, and then finally some number of characters, 0 or more. Okay, so these would all show up. Right? So there is another wild card character we talked about. This underscore, a single character. So if we did like percent S underscore A percent. Okay. Now, what that means is I want any number of characters before an S, followed by, it has to have a single character. It can be anything. It can be anything between that S and that A, but there has to be a character between the S and the A. And then any number of characters afterwards. Okay. So now we know it's going to be some of these, but now it's Istanbul will show up because there's a T between the S and the A. Isparta would also show up, right? Because there's a P between the S and the A. But Bursa would not show up now because there is no character between the S and the A. Okay. So if I wanted to, let's say I had a data table of people's names, and I wanted to say, give me all people's names who ends in Olu. Okay, so Moratolu. Are there any Soyadas? Are there any people here with Soyada that ends in Olu? I can't tell. Ah, yes. Well, I got Atakan Kashla Olu. Anybody else?
Yes, I'm listening to you.
Who's? Yeah.
Atakan is me. Yes.
Go on, yeah.
How are you?
Well, now I was saying, if we wanted to have in our database, we have names like yours, like Kashla Olu, right? And Doan wrote as well, right? Doan contacted said as well that his name is in Olu, right? So. So we want to get all of the people in our database that their name ends in Olu. How would we do that? How can we do that with the like here?
Okay, we can say after like a percent sign, just 100, yes, and then Oglu, and that's all.
All right, so yes, if we did this, right, we would get these two and anyone else as well, right? Whose name ends like that. All right, so we can do it like that. Oh, nope, I didn't mean to. I was doing that. Okay. Right. Let's
Thank you.
see. Sure. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Some other examples. There's lots of other examples. So let's say we wanted to arrange. What do you mean by that, Seamus? Maybe can you explain better? So like between like like the first like using string. It's like the first between A and F or something, between A and G, like that. Yeah, A and K. I think you can do comparison strings with like less than K, greater than A, something like that. Maybe we could do that. Let me look at an example of that. I think you can do that using the greater than and less than, or between, maybe the between. What is it? The between keyword, like I showed you earlier, for numbers. I think you can do that with strings as well. So what if we wanted, let's say let's do one change here. What if we wanted all cities who have an A in them, but all cities who have an A, but the A cannot be the last character. So, or let me say not that the A can't be the last character. Let's say that, because the way I'm thinking about it, these three would end up in there. Okay, an N. Let's do N. They have an N in them. They have like the letter N, like Ankara and Antalya and Antakya here. But the N is not the last character, so I don't want the Mersin to show up. Okay, so I want if they have an N, I want it to show up, but I don't want it to show up if the only N is the last character in the string. Yeah, Kershot, that was exactly how I was thinking as well, where you say any number of characters, right? Any number of characters, what he wrote here. So any number of characters, then an N, then one character, then any number of characters. Okay. Let me ask you, is there a difference between this and this? Is there a difference between these two? Okay, what's the difference? How would it work differently here? Interesting and understanding there, because what would prevent this from also having the last character be an N? For Kershad, your comment there. See, I'm not seeing a difference in how these two functionally work. So maybe play around with them and see if that was kind of why I changed it to an N instead of an A, because of all these guys here. See if play around with it in your own and see if there's any difference. If you can come up with an example where those two likes result in different results. Okay, because I'm not seeing how they are different, but I'm not saying that it's not different. I'm just saying I don't know. Okay, so let's also talk about, let's see. We also have a not like, it doesn't list it here, but you also have a not like as well, which is the opposite. Oh, one thing I did say I was going to tell you guys, in Microsoft Access, the percent is not, you don't use percent for that, you use a star. And instead of underscore, you use a question mark. Okay, so percent is MySQL, star is Microsoft Access, underscore is MySQL, question mark is Microsoft Access. Okay. All right. Okay. Fun times. Okay. Null search. Okay. Null is a long discussion. Can be a long discussion. Null is not nothing. Null is not 0 for a numeric value. Null is not spaces it's not spaces or any other particular string value. All right. Null represents the absence of information. Okay. So the reason why I point that out is we don't use equals null like we would in Java or certain other programming languages. Okay. Come back over here. We don't use equals null. Okay. We use the special keyword is. So is null. Comment is null says give me all values, all rows where the comment has no value. Okay. Where again, it's not spaces, it's not 0, it's a special value null. Okay. This is going to be very important because I'm going to show you a couple of things. Okay. There's also a negated version that is not null. Okay. Where we could say if it has a value, if it's not null, for non-null values. Okay. I want to point this out because let me show you something here. Okay. If we were to use the equals representation, so okay. Now, there's a couple of easy ones we'll go to here at the bottom first. Okay, null is null. Is that well? Let me show you. Is a truth table. True or false? Okay, easy ones first. Okay, null is null. Is that true or false? Good, true. Null is not null. False. All right. Null is greater than null. right? Null is less than null. We'll very rarely have a compiler error because we don't really compile the code, so it will just result in a row, either getting rows we don't expect or not getting the rows that we do expect, because we don't really compile SQL code. In fact, let me show you some examples here in just a moment. Okay. Now, here's where these become very, very, very interesting. Okay. Null does not equal null. Okay. That sounds pretty easy because it's false. Okay. What about this one? What do you think it should be? Okay. Arjun says false. False. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually false. Okay. Now that seems strange because you're like, well, wait, null equals, it's the same thing. They're both null, right? But because null represents an unknown value, a lack of information, it's saying an unknown value equals an unknown value, but we don't know. We don't know what that value is. Like, value could be 3, or it could be Joseph, or it could be who knows what, right? We don't know what it is. So to say that one unknown value is the same as another unknown value, we don't know that. So we say it's false. We cannot know certainly, we cannot know with certainty that it is, those are two equal values. But we also can't know with certainty that they're not equal either. So that's why this is also false. But that's why SQL provides us with these two keyword options where we say, is this unknown value unknown? Yes, well, that's true. Is this unknown value not unknown? Or is this unknown value known? No, so then it's false. Okay. Make sure you're clear on that, because you cannot check, because this will execute, right? This SQL will execute and will probably give you results that you're not expecting. Okay. All right. What we may do is on Wednesday next week is get some examples of this, because I really want you to understand how the null works on this, because it's very important that you understand it. Okay. All right. We can order our information. Notice, note, I want to tell you something. When we run a select query, when we run any select query, we are not changing anything about the database. We are not changing the order of how rows are stored. We are not changing values in the database. We are not adding columns or adding rows, or removing columns or removing rows. We are simply telling the database, we're telling the database management system, how do we want to see the data that's already there? Okay, so we're not changing anything to the database. Okay. All right, so here, when we order by the salary column, we're not changing anything about the way that that data is stored in the staff table. We're simply saying, give me all the rows in the staff table, give me these columns from that table, but I want to display them in a way that the first row I see is the highest salary, and the last row I see is the lowest salary. So that is how the rows will be displayed. Okay. By default, if we don't include this keyword here, descending, DESC, this keyword that stands for descending, automatically, by default, it will order ascending. Okay, which means from lowest to highest, or in the case of a string type, a varchar type column, it will order in alphabetical order. So notice it's going to do all flats, all F type properties, and then all H's after that. Okay. Now we can order by more than one column. So we might say, well, I want to see all types together first, F's and then H's in this case, and then I want to see them by rent descending. So I'm going to, so notice that all the F's come before all the H's, but then within that group of F's, the rents are descending, 450 down to 350. Within the group of H's, the rents are descending, 650 down to 600. All right, so there's some clear, fun stuff there about how to order things. Again, this doesn't change anything about the way the data itself is stored in the database. It only changes how we see it. Okay. You will want to know these aggregate functions. Count returns the number of values, non-null values in a specified column. Sum returns the sum of values, adding them all together. Average returns the average of values. Minimum returns the smallest. Maximum returns the largest. A few points about each of these. Count, minimum, and maximum. Count, min, and max can apply to both numeric and non-numeric or text fields. Okay, so like the minimum would be the first. If it was a text field, would be the first one alphabetically. The maximum would be the last one alphabetically. Count can tell me how many values in any type of data, number or whatever. It just tells me how many rows. How many rows have values in that column. Okay. Count star, you'll want to get used to typing that because that can come in handy. In fact, let me kind of show that. Maybe a text document. Okay, so a couple of queries you'll want to get into the habit of. You'll get used to writing this query. You will also get used to writing this query. Okay, these are going to come in very handy for you to know. Is give me all rows from a table. Give me a select of how many, especially as what will happen is you'll start trying where you will start running queries of a certain kind, and you'll be trying to figure out why you're getting rows that you're not expecting, or why you're not getting rows that you are expecting. So when you run a query like this, select count of all rows, all columns from a particular table under a certain condition, and you'll say, oh, there's 5 rows that are coming back. It'll give you back 5, and you really expected it to be 50, right? And so this is, certain things like in Java, public static void main. Public class, whatever, things like that, where you can start typing those things in your sleep, or you might have dreams, or for some of you maybe nightmares of code. These are the types of queries that show up so frequently that they show up in your dreams and nightmares because you get into the habit of typing them so quickly. Okay, but count can be used to count all of the rows that match a certain criteria. Okay. Let's see what else. Yeah, distinct can be used before a column name to eliminate duplicates. So you might say select count distinct some column. So then it's going to count all the distinct values in that column. Distinct will have no effect with min and max, right? Because when you say distinct min, well, if the minimum value is 3 and there's 20 instances of 3 in there, it doesn't change that fact, right? But it could have it with the sum or average, especially depending on the type of data. All right. Okay. So if we use aggregates, by the way, aggregates are going to be very important for when we start talking about group bys. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Actually, I don't think we'll get there today. I think that's going to be a next week thing. Okay. All right. So this would not work. This query would not work because there's no group by. So you can't say select staff number count of how many rows have salary in them, or at least it shouldn't work. Sometimes these things change and they try to become smarter, especially in the age of Google getting very smart and now ChatGPT getting really smart. Sometimes these things try to interpret what we meant by something, but definitely old SQL and definitely Microsoft Access, this would be an illegal thing. This would give you an error. I noticed I remember some of you guys were saying compiler error earlier, and I said there's not really a compiler. There is, I shouldn't say there's not a compiler. It's your experience with running MySQL queries will be slightly different from your experience with running Java. And so it could give you an error in that it could say, you know, this SQL is malformed or something like that. Okay. Next week, I did not get around to making example data to run these queries on in a MySQL database here for today. The plan was to do that tomorrow, was to have that for examples for tomorrow. But like I said, we're not having class tomorrow, so we'll do that next week instead. Okay, so this query doesn't really make sense, so that's why it would be illegal, and that's why when you went to click run on it, it would tell you I can't do that. It would say there's an illegal expression there. Okay. So you could say, I want to know how many properties have rent greater than 350. Okay, so we say select count star as my count from property for rent where the rent is greater than 350. We get an alias, right? We get a column name and a value. Notice we don't know anything about the properties that have rent greater than 350. Is it a flat? Is it a house? Is it an apartment? Is it something else? We don't know, right? The only thing we know from this information is how many properties, how many rows in the property for rent table have a value greater than 350 in the rent column. That's all that we know from this. That might be all we need to know. Okay. That might be all that we wanted to get from this, and that's okay, right? So if we wanted to know which properties had rent greater than 350, we could take out the count part, and here's just a select star from property for rent, and then we would get all the information for all properties with rents greater than 350. Okay. We can also put a distinct on a column name to say select distinct property numbers, right, as my count from viewing that had view dates between these two dates. So any properties that show up, right, any properties that show up in there, we're going to say only count the number of distinct property numbers that show up between those dates. Right? Now, again, we don't know how many viewings appeared. We don't know how many rows there are between these two dates. All we know is that 2 distinct properties were viewed in the month of May. All right. Now, we did say earlier you can't have a column with an aggregate function. So if we go back to, which one was it, 38? Nope, there, that one. We can't do that, but can do this. This is okay. So we can put multiple aggregate functions together into the same query. So we might say, tell me what the minimum salary is, tell me what the maximum salary is, and tell me what the average salary is from the staff table. We would get those three values. So we can put multiple aggregate functions into the same query. We just couldn't have a standalone column alongside of this. If I want to go into group by with this being the last thing. Yeah, let's do group by and we'll finish up here because I feel like I've given you guys quite a bit of new information, and so let me do some group bys. All right. So group by is how we're going to, one of the useful tools for group by, one of the useful things we can do with a group by is integrate it with aggregate functions to be able to see some of those informations, like we might be able to find out for each branch, what is the maximum salary or minimum salary or average salary for each branch, right? So not the average salary of the entire company, but what's the average salary for each individual branch, okay? So, some rules, any column names that are just standalone columns or expressions that are in the select must appear in the group by. Okay. Though if the where is used, if the where shows up for a group by, the where is applied first to limit the results on the rows, and then the group by is done on the remaining rows that actually show up in the query. Okay. All right. So here's an example. We say we're going to count the number of staff at each branch and the total salary for the branch. So how much money is that each branch spending? Okay, so we can say select branch number, count staff number, sum of salary from the staff table, group by branch number. Now notice we don't need a group by the other two, okay, because the other two are aggregate functions. Group by branch number, and then we also have an optional order by branch number. My experience tells me that I know Oracle does this. I'm not positive about MySQL, but I know Oracle does that. If you have a group by, the order by automatically happens on its own, but it can be useful if we want to view it in a certain order. It can be useful to force that. Okay. So here, notice that each branch, we count the number of staff that are at that branch, and we add up all the salaries that are at that branch. Again, notice some information we don't have. We don't know what each individual salary at branch B003 is, nor do we know what the individual salaries are at B005. Now, we do know what the salary is for the employee at B007 because there's only one of them, right? Since there's only one person, we know what that salary is. But we don't know individual salaries at the others. But again, that may be information we didn't need for this query. For whatever the part of the program that used this query is, we didn't need to know. Right. So again, any standalone columns or expressions that are not aggregate functions need to show up in the group by. And this will be the last slide before we end for today, because the next topic is more involved and I don't want to get there. I don't want to go too far. Okay. Here we say, okay, give me all branch numbers with the count of the staff and the sum of the salary, group by branch number. But this special having, okay, having works similar to a where, but it works on the after the group by has occurred. Okay, so we're saying I want only those results where I only want to see where the branch has more than one employee. Okay, so notice the difference between this and the previous result. This gave me all of them, 54,000, 39,000, 9,000. Now notice that last result is not there anymore, right? Because I can say I don't want to see the result or results where the count of the staff number was greater than 1. Okay. So it limited that results. It only showed me results where this value in the count of staff number is greater than 1, so 2 or 3 or more. So again, this has a Boolean expression here. It works like a where clause, but it's not the same as a where clause. Okay, a where clause limits individual rows within the result. Okay. So imagine that what we got was the original thing was the columns, branch number, staff number, and salary. And then it said, okay, count for each branch number in there. The group by branch number said for each branch number in there, count the number of staff number values, add up all of the salaries. Okay. A where clause in here, let's say we would have said, select this branch number, count sum from staff, where salary is greater than 9,000. Would have first limited those rows that had salaries that were only giving me results where the salary was greater than 9,000. And then it would have done the group by on that resulting rows. In fact, we have just enough time. Let me do that. We're gonna go back a ways. I want to show you. That's the staff number. Nope. There we go. These guys. But I don't see their branch here. You know what? I'm out of time. All right, so we'll start off with this on the next lecture. So let me go back. We'll start off on this one on the next lecture. I'll show it in the, or maybe I'll do it as the Excel spreadsheet and save this Excel spreadsheet into the lecture examples folder. That's what I'll do. I'll save it into the examples folder. Okay, so that you guys can see what I was trying to do here, and then maybe I'll explain it on the next lecture. Okay, again, I'll make a special announcement on Teams too that we will not be having lecture tomorrow morning because of an appointment that I have, residence application, Ecomed application for my family. So it's very important that my family get to stay here. You know, that would not be fun. I mean, I love Turkey. I love my family. I think I love my family more. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Are there any questions before we end the call? Or any comments? Okay, thank you guys. Have a nice day to you as well. I will see you guys on. Go back and watch the videos from last week, Nasimi. There's a it talks about. Oh, that was something I said I was going to do, wasn't it? No, I showed you the XAMPP is what I use. The XAMPP is what I use. You can also use if you're running Windows WAMP. If you're running Mac MAMP, and if you're running Linux LAMP, you can also run one of those. Okay, XAMPP as well as WAMP I know come with download tutorials to show you how to do that and set it up. If you have any issues with that, let me know. I think I have a video from 2 years ago when we were meeting online that I can share as well. Okay, so let me know if you have any issues with that, and that goes for anybody else. If you have any problems downloading and installing and running a MySQL, PHP, Apache server bundle. Okay. All right. Have a nice afternoon and a nice weekend, and I'll see you guys in a week.